Fox 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Ilyasah Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on Trailblazing Women. I'm your host, Ilyasah Evers. Women today are earning more well-deserved recognition, prestigious awards, and leadership roles than ever before. They're also bringing us to a greater understanding of how we're all connected as they blaze new trails and take us into the future.
Dance, get up and get with this. Shante is here to take care of business.
Legendary pioneering artist Roxanne Shante is hip-hop's first female superstar. She was honored at the 2025 Grammys with a Lifetime Achievement Award, becoming the first solo female rap artist to receive the prestigious recognition. She began her career as a battle rapper at the age of 14 in Queens, winning battle competitions to earn prize money for her family. The Netflix biopic, Roxanne, brought the story of her extraordinary talent and success in entertainment and in overcoming life's challenges to millions of fans around the world. This humble superstar says it warms her heart to see the progress that's been made by today's female rappers who are clearly charting their own course the way they want it.
Whether it's I want to choose my own lawyer, I want to have my own accountant, I want to choose my album cover, I want to make sure that this is the artwork, I want to know where this business is going, where it's not.
Dr. Ilyasah Shabazz is an award-winning author of 5 books, including Growing Up X, an educator and chairperson of the Shabazz Center. She says much of what we learned about her father, Malcolm X, later known as Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, is not accurate. She's fighting for the release of government documents about his life and assassination. Dr. Shabazz says she finds herself looking often to the example set by her late mother, Dr. Betty Shabazz. No matter what was going on, Dr. Betty Shabazz taught her children to never give in to despair, no matter how severe the difficulties.
Having lived through surveillance, her home firebombed, witnessing her husband, our father's assassination at such a young age while she was pregnant with twins and had 4 babies. And I often wonder, how was she able to do that?
CUNY professor and award-winning author Ava Chin is a 5th-generation Chinese-American New Yorker. Her family helped to establish Manhattan's Chinatown and build the Transcontinental Railway. She explores her changing family dynamics through the lens of history in Mott Street, a Chinese-American family story of exclusion and homecoming. She tells us the women in her family showed her how to survive.
I was raised by a single mother because my father walked out on the family, and his leaving made it so difficult for us economically. But luckily, I was raised by a family of very strong women.
Let's get into this now with our panel. Joining me for this conversation is Ava Chin. She's an award-winning author and CUNY professor. Ava, great to have you with us.
It's so nice to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Also with us, back on Street Soldiers, but this is her first time back as being the first solo female artist rapper to win a Lifetime Achievement Award, the one and only Roxanne Shante. And you can hear her every day, Monday through Friday, on Sirius XM on LL Cool J's Rock the Bells Radio from 4 to 7 p.m. Roxanne, first of all, on behalf of Street Soldiers and all your fans, and I know our audience shares this sentiment and our guests as well, congratulations. That is just, it's so amazing. So amazing. And I know a little bit about some of the work that you do behind the scenes, especially helping young women in distress, helping them through tough times, helping them get on the right track and really find their voice and find their safety. And it was so exciting to hear that you won that. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Also joining us is Dr. Ilyasah Shabazz. She's an author and professor and chairwoman of the Shabazz Center and daughter of Malcolm X, as many of you know. Thank you all for being with us. Ilyasah, thanks so much for making time for us. We appreciate it.
Yes, I'm excited to be here with this incredible league of women.
Shante, I want to start with you on this. You know, hip hop fans know you. The world knows you now that didn't know you because of this Grammy Award. How did you find out about it, and how do you feel about that?
Well, I truly feel honored. I think when I first heard the class that I was actually being inducted with, that was the most incredible part. Because when you're talking about being able to be placed in a class with Prince and Frankie Beverly, and then Frankie Valli and Taj Mahal, and the clash, it just makes you sit back and say, okay, and then you say all of those great names, and then you say Roxanne Shante. It was truly an honor for me. And it took a moment for me to realize, like, okay, this is really happening. When you think of Roxanne Shante, I want people to look at me and know that everything is always possible as long as you're still alive.
Dr. Ilyasah Shabazz, you've been a trailblazer in many, many ways, and having your own career as an author, as a professor, and then fighting to keep your mother and father's, Dr. Betty Shabazz and Malcolm X's lives and legacy alive with the Shabazz Center. In terms of what's driven you to carry on, but also at the same time simultaneously forging your own path. Tell us about that.
Well, my mother made sure that she safeguarded her husband's legacy all of these years, right? Because what most of us learned of Malcolm X, we are now discovering was inaccurate. And so I think of my mother often, she didn't live a life of despair, of bitterness. She was kind. She was really such an incredible role model. And it is because of her that I'm able to do the work that I do. My mother made sure that we learned to love ourselves. We learned about the significant contributions that women made to the world, that Islam made to the world, that the African diaspora as a first world nation, the cradle of civilization, made to the world, so that we loved ourselves. We saw you as a reflection of me, hence loving you as much as I love myself, and never relied on others to determine our self-worth. And so as I, navigated through my life, finding that I was more passionate about the education that people were receiving. They didn't, most people in my age group, in my generation, didn't learn the way I did. Didn't grow up with loving themselves, right, based on historical truths.
Absolutely. And Ava, tell us a little bit about your journey, what drove you into becoming an award-winning author, and also to really explore the experience as an Asian woman.
Yeah, well, I'll say that one of the things that made me a writer or made me want to be a writer was because I had heard all of these stories about our family growing up. I'm a fifth generation Chinese American New Yorker.
Wow.
And I'm a descendant of a Chinese railroad worker. So growing up, I knew all about, or I thought I knew all about the first transcontinental railroad through our family stories. I mean, that railroad was the physical apparatus that helped unite the country physically after the Civil War. And I knew that my family also helped to establish New York's Chinatown. But by the time I was born and growing up, I was raised by a single mother because my father walked out on the family. I was raised by a family of very strong women, and I had great role models. My grandmother was one of the first women in our family to go to college. But I also knew that the stories that I heard growing up about our contributions to this country were not reflected in the history that I was learning at school. And so I made it part of my mission to try to bring these stories back to life, and to let other people know, because these were largely stories that most Americans weren't aware of.
We're back right after this.
Shante, what were some of the turning points in your career where you realized early on, wait a minute, I have to take control of what's happening to me? Give us a turning point that comes to mind.
I think the turning point for me was when I sat back and started understanding that hip hop was truly a business, that this was not something that we're just going from the parks, that it's not going just from making records in somebody's bedroom, that now this is getting ready to go into the boardroom. And having that understanding, I remember one day just saying, okay, look, I need to learn about publishing. I need to learn about writers. I need to know what's going on. What is a royalty check? And this was already well into my career where no one felt the need to educate me on these things. So I took it upon myself to find out what these things are, to go and register with ASCAP. But then also, I remember the day when I was online, literally getting ready to register with the IBEW, Local 3 Electrical Workers Union, because they felt like if you held the microphone, if you worked DJ equipment, all these things would qualify for being an electrical worker. And I went there like 4 o'clock in the morning to try to register early because I knew how important it was to be part of a union. And I knew that hip hop never had a union. And I knew that there was no guarantee, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And so I went and literally got a job at a hotel. And during the time while I was working at the hotel, I took time out to learn about the industry and then came back literally with a vengeance. Like, okay, look, you owe me this. I need this. What are we doing about this? Just walking in and taking meetings and, was able to sit back and say, okay, you know what? Now Roxanne Shante feels complete because I needed to know all of the things that would take, because you can't get back everything that they took from you,
Right.
but you can
make
make
sure
sure.
it doesn't happen again.
There you go. Exactly.
Ilyasah, what about for you, a turning point?
I went to an all-girls prep boarding school, and we used to tutor kids who were in Children's Village. It was a lockup group home. And I used to look at these young people and just wonder, why were they not animated? Why were they not, excited? They were just sort of flat. What I started seeing is that, this education curriculum was awful. And it was the reason why they were not animated. It was the reason why they lacked the ability to know that they were worthy of love, that they were worthy of a quality education, that they were worthy to participate in mainstream society. And so I began writing my books, which are also award-winning scholastic books. So it was so important that we understand that Black history is American history. And that American history is also Latin American history, Native American history, Asian American history, that our history books and our education curriculum for our children are not complete unless pictures and stories of everyone is included on those textbooks.
Ava, I see you nodding your head, and I'm sure there's parallels that you see with the Asian culture as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's so important that these histories are taught, and also the histories of the ways in which so many of us are interconnected and linked. When I went back and I looked at this history, I realized that so much of Asian American history goes back to the era of Reconstruction. One of the things I try to talk to other Asian Americans about is the ways in which the plight of Chinese Americans from the 19th century was really connected to the ways in which other people were oppressed, right? Because the people in power worked hand in hand with each other. So anyway, so these histories are incredibly important. Other thing I wanted to say is that I was friends with Yuri Kuchiyama, and the education that was happening, the ways that the community came together in Harlem and taught each other information that was not taught, that should have been taught in schools. And of course, she was very connected to your family.
No,
Right, Malcolm X. And I just want to say Yuri Kuchiyama, a Japanese-American activist, was extremely close to my father. And yes, all of us were more united than we are today.
Ava, was there a time when you felt discouraged? What do you do in those circumstances, or what do you draw on?
I like to go back to think about my ancestors, the women who raised me, my grandmother, who was very polite, but she wouldn't take no for an answer when she really wanted something. When times are really tough, I think a lot about her, and I think about the ways in which my ancestors, so, we've been in New York for a really long time, for generations. They survived. The other thing I think about a lot is in moments where I really feel very isolated, or I feel that we are so divided as a country, I think about the ways in which I have family members who did a lot of hidden work, where they reached out outside of the community, outside of the Asian American community, and they worked with other New Yorkers when there were pogrom victims that were, fleeing the western part of Russia. I had family members who lent a hand across to their Jewish neighbors across the Lower East Side. But they also worked with Black ministers in Harlem, Irish pastors in Brooklyn, to really speak out against injustices that they saw. So the times in which I feel really sad and alone, I think back upon the ways in which the communities actually work together with other communities. And I hope that that is the kind of thing that we can see more going forward.
Ilyasah, what about you? I want you to share with our audience what you shared with me years ago, which I never ever forgot. I asked you once, how could your mother, there she was in that Audubon ballroom 60 years ago, pregnant with your sisters, there and seeing her husband gunned down right in front of her, sitting there, this horrific scene. How did she come back from that and raise such a beautiful family? Or what was her mindset? And please share that with everybody.
She used to always say, Ilyasah, find the good and praise it, right? And it was learning from the challenges, the lesson in it, rather than, gloom, all of the things that can pull you down. And much like Ava, when I found myself in a challenging space, I always thought about my ancestors.
Roxanne, what about that? We've been talking so much the last several years about hip hop history because of the 50th anniversary. But if we really broaden it out to talking about women and women entertainers in the music industry, there's a long legacy there and a huge evolution.
Absolutely, it is. And when we were discussing the fact of what do we do when we're feeling bad? What do we do
Yeah.
when we get to that point? I sat here and I listened to both of the sisters discussing the fact that they go back to the ancestors, but I myself went through the foster care system. I was on my own in the streets for a very long time at a very, very young age. So because of that, I didn't have that to tap into. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. When I have a bad moment, when I get to that point, I get chicken livers. Like I just have to have some chicken livers. I don't, I mean, I'm being
I thought you were going to say a tequila shot or something.
no, I have to have some fried chicken livers with some hot sauce and a grape soda. I can remember my grandmother when I was younger. I can remember her making smothered chicken livers when I was in Anniston, Alabama. So that taste always walked with me. And still today, if something is going on or if I'm feeling some type of way, any family member, including my children who are now adults, will go and get me some chicken livers. That's the reason why we as women bond so much as we have gotten older, because the stories need to be told. And what missing piece for me, then Ava will be able to give me that piece. You know what I'm saying? Yolanda will be able to give me that piece. And then for me, all I'll be able to give y'all is some chicken livers. Now, the thing about it is we'll be able to walk away and feel absolutely great because we understand that as women, sometimes the only thing that we can depend on to make us feel better is us.
Roxanne Shante, a lot of people get stuck on this wrong that was done to them like when they were kids, or like they hold on to these grudges and it just becomes a defining thing of like their present experience. How did you not let that turn you bitter?
Because I survived it. Think about all the people who don't survive the same exact things that you went through.
Right.
Everybody gets into things, but how many people get through things? So if you've made it to this side and it is now, if that was yesterday, that was yesterday's. You can't feel today's pain physically from yesterday. So why carry it mentally? You survived it.
That's right.
No, absolutely. And Ilyasah, how important is that for moving forward and also for us to understand what other people in the past went through and achieved?
And that was the saying that my mother referenced, find the good and praise it.
Right.
Because for my mother to endure the challenges that she endured, she had to focus on the lesson that she learned, right? Rather than stay in that painful space.
Right.
And that's what Roxanne is saying, and that is what Ava is saying. Find the good and praise it.
Find the good and praise it. I love that. I love that. Ava, final word from you about just in terms of not holding on to the wrongs that have been done in the past.
There's a lot that we can't control, right? And we can't control the way that people treat us. But what we can do is understand how we see ourselves and then move forward from there, right? All that other stuff, that's just like a situation, right? It can be a very damaging situation, but the real story is, how does the individual lead their lives, right? How do we move forward? What do we remember and what do we take with us from the past? And how does that help us to see new things in our current situation?
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on Trailblazing Women. You can watch it again on our Fox 5 NY YouTube page and the Fox Local app. Remember, use your mind, it's your best weapon. I'm Ilyasah Evers. Let's push for peace, love, and justice for all.